Tony Pollard, 12 yards away from getting to 1,000 yards in a season. So my question for y'all is, do you still view 1,000 yards as a big deal for running back versus wide receiver? And do you think it's a big deal across the board? Do you have differing opinions?
All right, so to add in how many touchdowns, he's almost at 10 touchdowns now too. That's a factor. So so that's production. That's not just hey, you gathered lots of yards because we gave you lots of carries. I think, Kevin, the total number,
he actually has 12 touchdowns with receiving too.
And that, I think, is it 9 touchdowns
rushing.
Correct. Okay, and he can get to 10, which I think is a great barometer of his production. Ooh. Kevin, what's his yards per carry?
5.3.
That's really good.
My gosh.
That's impressive. Yeah. And you have multiple 20+ yard runs and multiple 20+ yard runs for touchdowns. So when I look at the totality of what he's accomplished this year, 1,000 yards does not in itself define something. But to add on to all the other things that show efficiency, I think that's where we've learned, Mike, that's where analytics, I think, does help. Is you say, okay, it wasn't just he got a whole bunch of carries and he was good. He also was efficient with he was getting this number. This is where you want the standard to be, and that's what he's done this season.
I hear you, and I like that that's a number for Tony Pollard, but that's not a number for, let's say, Derrick Henry, or if that makes sense. And I don't think it's a number for CeeDee Lamb anymore. I think that for Tony Pollard, it is because he's kind of a share. So if you can get two guys at 1,000 yards and you can get Zeke and Pollard at 2,000 yards, I think it's a big number when you kind of have a shared backfield. I think when you don't have a shared backfield, I do think 1,500 yards is the major number for me.
Okay, because 1,000 yards and Zeke is at 866, if people were curious.
And I think that's good as a group, especially that Pollard has missed a game because of, I don't know how hurt he was last week, but I get why they sat him out, right?
And just, by the way, just as an aside, is Zeke has 37 more carries than Tony Pollard this year.
He's less efficient. That's for sure. Runs probably more on known rundowns for sure too.
Yeah. Although with the Cowboys, that could be all the downs, right?
And you know what? I hope they can run physically and effectively in the playoffs too. I hope they continue to do that because I was watching Troy Aikman and Michael Irvin highlights this morning, and I was like, man, that was really good. But it was good because of the balance. It was good because Emmitt Smith was going to rock you too. Everybody did their jobs well.
Now, you brought up CeeDee Lamb, which is interesting because I had also made a note about him. He surpassed 1,000 yards for the second time in 3 seasons, but last year, he got 1,100 yards. This year, he's up at 1,300 yards. Yeah. And now I kind of feel like that's going to be the bar going forward.
Better season than Amari ever had.
Sure.
Really? By numbers?
Yep.
Okay.
Touchdowns, not. I think he's actually he needs another touchdown.
Okay.
But most receptions, yards, he's been more productive than Amari ever was in his first year as a number one. And I agree with you. Now he's gone here. And Kevin, if let's say at the end of the year, he finishes this Sunday's game, he gets 100 yards, he gets 1,400, whatever yards. Then next year he gets 1,200, but he has 15 touchdowns. Then you can look at it and go, no, man, this is the balance is there. You're producing.
Because especially with the expanded schedule, 1,000 yards is 59 yards a game, which that in of itself does not seem impressive. Although I know making it through an entire NFL season healthy is a big deal. Over the last 5 years, I just want to see where y'all are at this. How many running backs do you think run for 1,000 yards on average per season?
1,000?
6.
I was going to guess 10.
Okay. You said 6?
Yeah.
It's 10 to 11. And the reason why I have the gap is there are 7 that are within 100 yards of getting to 1,000 this year. So there's
how many then are within 100 yards of not getting to 1,000? Does that make sense? They're just over 1,000 by 100, just less than 100 yards.
That I don't know. So there's 10 this year, 7 last year, 9 the year before, 16 the year before, and 9 in 2018. So about 10 or 11 per year. How many receivers do you think get to 1,000 yards a year?
20.
Yeah.
20?
Yeah.
Very good.
Are you including tight ends too?
I am not.
Okay.
Just wide
21.
receiver. 22 to 23.
Okay.
And
We were
so, yeah. And
I mean,
so
the game's changed, right? It's a little over 60% passing and 40% running.
And so it doesn't surprise you that about twice as many, it varies from year to year, but about twice as many receivers hit 1,000 yards as running backs.
Right.
All right. So then do you still view 1,000 yards as a bigger deal in theory for a running back than a wide receiver?
I guess in theory, if you're making me choose, yes, 1,000 is maybe a little bit more difficult to get as a runner than a receiver, but I still don't find that as a number that impresses me at all.
I would, Kevin, if you can, in your next week's research project.
Okay.
I would like to
Playoff
know
time
the
next
amount
week.
of attempts. If are the attempts up for passing as opposed to running? It feels like it has to be.
Yeah. In general,
For sure.
yes, but this has been in like an odd renaissance year for the running back and for running. So you have seen an uptick in run plays this year, but in general, like if you're looking at trends 5, 10, 15 years, you're absolutely right. I'll have to get back to you on the statistical differences.
That's interesting too, because did you feel like the Rams, because this is a copycat league, did you feel like the Rams and the Bengals were running teams last year? I mean,
not particularly. I didn't think, I didn't look at the Rams and be like, oh man, you like straight away think of Matthew Stafford and Aaron Donald. And then with the Bengals.
And also Cooper Kupp.
Yes, exactly. And with the Bengals, I'm thinking Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow.
Higgins.
Yeah. And so those were the people that jumped to mind. Not to say that they had no run game. I'm not saying that whatsoever. But in a copycat league, I didn't think of those two teams as like ground and pound teams.
No, I'm with you. And I know I'm staying on the topic here, but I'm just thinking about most likely the Cowboys' first round opponent. I know it can change, but if you think of Tampa, they used to be a running team. When you played them in week 1, you thought, oh, could Leonard Fournette run on you? And now you don't think of them at all as a running team, which is a great matchup for the Cowboys. I know the name Tom Brady, it still does scare me in playoffs. I get he's not a top 5 quarterback anymore, all of those things. But I think great matchups for the Cowboys. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I'd love your opinion here as we're talking about running and passing in 1,000 yards.
Where do you think Tampa is in the run hierarchy?
Bottom third?
Dead last.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Dead last.
And isn't that great
by
for a team?
200 yards.
And Hankins isn't coming back for the first round of the playoffs? Do we know that or not know that?
I feel like he might be.
Yeah,
okay.
I thought he might be.
That
and
could
LDE
help.
too.
But I mean, it scares me against
And if you
San
get that
Francisco. I know Brock Purdy doesn't scare me too much, even though his numbers are pretty good. He's not turning over the ball, throwing 2 touchdowns a game. I just think of the Cowboys, and if a team can dictate tempo and dictate the clock, you could get in big trouble. That being said, it also worries me a lot that Nashawn Wright is probably going to be on the field 100% of the snaps or close to 100% of the snaps in a playoff game that, Mike Evans or Godwin or whoever it is. But teams like Green Bay that can run the ball that you're better than, but they can run the ball. Teams like San Francisco that you might not be better than as a team, but they can dictate the time and the tempo and the flow of the game because you struggle so much to stop the run. Maybe that changes when Hankins comes back.
Now, Mike, you asked a question about your tire to start, and we had a lot of helpful things.
Thank you.
In addition to the possibility of a nail or a screw being in your tire, multiple people said you could have a damaged rim or a valve issue. And now the valve issue, you can knock that out. Is significantly cheaper than if you have a rim issue. So could be rim, could be valve, could be something is in your tire. Okay. I think more often than not, something being in your tire is the most likely outcome, but there are other possibilities.
Could be the rim. And somebody's going to have to do that. Somebody's going to have to take care of it for him.
It's 10 o'clock in the morning, for God's sake.
Hey, did you? Oh, yeah, let's go.